Today I'm going to tie the Chromie, one of my favorite Chironomid pupa patterns. Here are the materials you'll need to tie this great little fly. So let's tie the Chromie. This is probably the one fly that I am synonymous with. It's an excellent pattern to use when chironomids are hatching. Their bodies are inflated with the trapped gases they use to elevate their way to the surface and help with their final transformation to adult. So into the vise I have placed a size 10 Mustad C49S, the curved scud or caddis hook, straight eye hook. It works well both under indicators and by itself on a dry line or a long leader or even a sinking line technique. I placed a 7/64 bead for a number 10. That's what I like to use for number 10s. For 12s, I'd use a 3/32. For 14s and smaller, 5/64. I want the weight of the bead to help sink the fly, but I also want it to be proportional to mimic that slender bulbous thorax of the natural adult. So I don't want my beads too big if I can help it. So I'm going to slide the bead back out of the way, attach my 70 denier black tying thread, just get it on there with a few wraps, and then return the thread back up to the hook eye, and we're going to tie in the gills. For the gills, we're going to use some white uni-stretch, excellent gill material. We can use it in a single strand that it comes off the spool, or split it in half for smaller sizes. So we're just going to push the majority of it out in front of the eye and then tie it in with a couple of wraps, one in front to sort of help stand up the gills so you can tie it on. And then we're just going to take our scissors and trim the remainder that's protruding out the back and just use a minimum of thread wraps to cover up that butt and build up a slender thread taper that the bead is going to slide over. Oops. And when I tie a lot of these, this is a step I would do. If I'm going to do a dozen of these flies, I would do a dozen chromies and I would put gills on a dozen hooks. So we're just going to trim that away, and then we'll slide our bead up into position right over the hook eye. And you can see I've left the tying thread protrudes out of the back from the gill tie-in, so I have another opportunity to cover it and further secure it. So it's in there good and strong. Your gills aren't going to pull out anything like that. So we're just going to take our tying thread and go down the hook shank to create a nice thread base all the way down. I go into the bend. So if you hold your tying thread, it's about a 45-degree angle to the hook point, and then I use wide open turns to quickly return up behind the bead. And now we're going to tie in the ribbing material. And for the ribbing material, we're going to use some small holographic red mylar. This imitates the residual hemoglobin that tends to gather at the tip of the abdomen on the pupa and along the abdominal segment. So what I'm trying to do is, if I can, is stab this into the back of the bead to help position it, and then secure it all the way down the near side of the hook shank. All the way down. Watch out for that hook point, and again, those open wraps right back up. I'm now going to tie in the body material. For the Chromie, we use silver flashabou, number 6901. You could tie it with black flashabou, and that would be a black Sally, or you could tie it with the blue steel 6916 to imitate a chironomid that's not fully inflated yet, doesn't have those distinct silver glow to it that's formed by the trapped gases. It's a real trigger for feeding trout. So I'm just laying this doubled. I've got two strands here. I've laid them across the barrel of the bobbin. Okay, you can clearly see the two strands. Moistening them helps keep them together, but for demonstration purposes, just want to see I've got two. I slide them off the barrel of the bobbin, and they're wrapped around the tying thread. I'm holding both ends with my other hand, and now I can just slide anywhere on the hook just by how I hold the flashabou and the tension I apply. I can tie any material wherever I want. So in this case, I want these on the top. So I've just got them in there, and I've now turned two strands into four strands with a minimum of bulk. And now what we're going to do is start winding these back down the hook shank in close touching turns, one right next door to the other. Be careful of that hook point. And the benefit of overwrapping the material with itself is, first of all, on the way back up, to the tie-in point, I have the opportunity to cover up any gaps I may have, little black spots in this case showing through from the underbody thread. And also, when you overwrap a material with itself, it becomes very durable. It's like trying to move your own body weight. So as we get towards the tie-in point, I've overlapped the wraps a little bit to help build up a slight taper, reminiscent of the natural chironomid pupa. And then a couple of turns to tie off, and then trim away the excess, and you have a nice silver bright body. So I'm now going to take the red holographic mylar and wind it forward to form the butt and the rib. So we start with the butt first by simply taking the mylar and wrapping it right at the tip of the abdomen 2 to 4 times until we get a nice little red butt. Like that. I might even go one more. And then I just open up the winding of the rib to wider wraps, spacing it out along the body to suggest the segmentation of the natural pupa, and the red holographic mylar suggests the residual hemoglobin that often gathers both at the tip of the abdomen and along the abdominal segment. So we'll tie that off and trim away the excess. Now we're going to form the thorax by using a single strand of peacock curl. I'm going to tie it in by the tip area, but I'm going to trim the very tip section off as it's brittle, and then we're just going to hold that up along the side of the hook, get that tied in directly behind the bead, and then we're going to wind it around behind the bead anywhere 3 to 5 times. We want to basically just cover up our thread work and build up a slender little thorax. No more than half the bead width back from the bead. So we don't want a thorax that extends well back onto the body. Like I said, it's more or less covering up our thread work, if you will. And then we're going to tie this off, but before we do that, we're going to take a little brushable super glue, crazy glue in this instance, and we're just going to coat the tying thread with this glue, because trying to glue down peacock curl can be problematic because you end up getting the glue all over the hurl, and we don't want that. So what we do is we let the tying thread be the medium to carry the glue into the tie-off area where it needs to be without negatively affecting those delicate tips of the peacock curl. And we just whip finish and tie that off. And that's nice and secure right like that. And then all we need to do is trim our gills. On our gills, this proportion is trim them about as long as the bead itself. And you can do that at any portion in the tying process of this fly, but I tend to do it at the end. And now we're just going to coat the body for a little added durability and shine. You could use crazy glue, or in this instance, I'm going to use some of my well-worn UV clear fly finish in thin formulation. This works great. Comes with a brush applicator. It's just the right consistency. So it's thin, it doesn't build up unnecessary bulk, and yet when you place it onto the body of the fly, you can see how it just stays in place. It's just the right thickness. So you get that nice application on there. It's not running all over the place, and then all we have to do is hit it with the UV light, and it cures in seconds. So there you go, the finished Chromie. An excellent fly to use anytime there's chironomids around, whether you're prospecting or right in the midst of a hatch. The silver body of this fly really does an excellent job mimicking the reflective nature of those inflated pupa that are inflated with the trapped gases they use to help elevate their way up through the water column and transform into the winged adult. You want to have a selection of these from number 10 down through number 16 or even 18. Remember, the further south you go in latitude, the smaller the chironomid pupa. I hope you enjoyed this pattern. For more information on fly fishing, in particular stillwater fly fishing, please visit my website, flycraftangling.com. Of course, you can also find me on Facebook and follow me in the conversation on Twitter. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in a future episode.